Hey, everybody. Welcome again to another episode of Behind the Door. I'm co-creator Brian Black, and with me today is super fan, social media guru, Brooks Bigley.
Hi. That would be me.
Yes, he is, representing the man beard. Also with us is J.M. Sheriff. He's our composer for many of our episodes and all of season 2. J.M., how you doing?
I'm great. Hi, guys.
And also with us is the author of Summer Child, the insane Daniel Russell.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah, it is morning for him. It's Sunday morning, guys. He's in Australia. It's 8 a.m. over there. So he did us a favor. We thought he was going to have to get up at 6 a.m., but I didn't do my math right. And our guest host is going to be the Creepy Podcast's own John Grilz. John, I'm going to pass over the torch to you. How you doing? Thanks for coming.
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I think this is the first time I've ever done a Google Hangouts podcast.
All right. And you know what? We had our share of issues getting everybody on. So thanks, Google.
Every episode.
As always.
All right.
So yeah. Are we gonna so the assumption is that everyone's already heard it and let all of it sink into their bones, and they're gonna be well aware and have plenty of questions. So kind of like I do. Like, why, Dan? Why'd you write that?
I asked myself the same thing yesterday. I heard it the week before, but it was just in the kitchen playing and just wanting to listen to the music and the sound effects. But I tend to listen to the grey rooms in the car on the way to work. And I was stuck in traffic yesterday, and it got to the major scene, and I was just laughing away because with the sound effects on top, it was too much, and I had to ask myself, what was I thinking all those years ago?
So how long ago did you write it?
When I listened to it, I could imagine the first house I lived in Australia, which would have been about 8 years ago. So it must have been around there.
When you say you can imagine, it's because it takes you back to that place when you were writing it, or did you use that model for the house that was in the story?
I kind of used the porch and the front room there. When he runs across the road and he's waiting by the front door and you can see through the window, all that was like the front of the house. So yeah,
Gotcha.
it takes me straight back.
So then how big of a departure was it for you once you wrote it and once you actually heard it turned into an audio drama format? Like, did that have a pretty big impact on how you view writing things like that?
Yeah, it was as I say, a big gap. I think I looked at the story when I gave it to Brian, so I just gave it a quick polish. And even that was a while ago, wasn't it, Brian? About a year, maybe more?
Yeah. I think we ended season 1's, I think everybody had to have their story in by April. So to go from April to now March, I mean, it's almost been a year in between all that. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it was hearing it afresh. And back then I used to write a lot of nasty stuff. So it kind of took me by surprise, especially the cake, if you remember that, between her legs. And I was like, oh.
Cake is a good way to put that. Sure, why not?
That took me by surprise. I forgot about that bit.
Yeah, that impressed me. We'll say, I guess impressed is the best word I can think of right now. But like I said before we started recording, like I don't think I wanted to eat for a while after hearing this. And I listened to it at 9 o'clock at night. So I don't think I ate until about noon the next day. So definitely had an impression on me.
Half the craze. It's going to go to Jason with the sound effects. It's just so wet and glistening.
He loves those sound effects, man. I mean, he giggles like a little schoolgirl when he when he's doing a thing with a pencil, stabbing in the leg, and all that. I mean, he's patting himself on the back every time he listens to that. So it's really good. This is actually Dan Russell's second story he submitted to us. The first story we really wanted to use, but it was a little too controversial even for us.
Wow, that's saying a lot.
What was it about?
Oh.
Yeah, can that be a Patreon reward where we can read that?
Hey Dan, what do you think?
It was free at one point. The last novel I had out, which I think was last year, the publisher released the one I sent you, Brian, as like a promotional free story because it's slightly linked to it. So I'll try and get some links of the one that didn't make it, because you said, Brian, it would probably shut us down in the first season.
Yeah,
that quite clearly.
The story is really strong. Daniel is a great writer, and I think the thing is though, is that if you are familiar with the anime series Bible Black, you might get kind of an idea as to where the story might go in terms of disturbing. But there were some scenes in there, and if I'd say that it was a good call, because being that people had issues with Mike Lee's story, with the little girl dying in the bear, I think it would probably be it was a good call. We didn't take it, but I mean, it was a good story. And I remember Jason and I were looking at it and we said, it's a great story, but there's a certain scene in there and we were just like, oh. But it kind of made a thing, because we really wanted to use Daniel's story, and that is sort of the first issue we had. Like, well, we want this writer. What are we going to do? And Dan was really great. He had another story and he was able to give it to us, and we were able to work with it. And I think that the fact that Summer Child kind of starts you off in the middle of something and doesn't necessarily waste time in explaining like how it got to this point, I think it was a really good call, especially for the fact that it is like pretty much in the middle of the season still. So it kind of works out as a story that, we're not trying to introduce anything. We're not trying to end anything. It kind of works out really well for it.
Yeah, it hits the ground running real fast. But that actually brings up an interesting point. A couple of years ago or so, I was in it was a Facebook group or a Slack group or something. And the conversation, sometimes people just post a question about whatever in audio drama. And one of the things I was really curious about, and, with horror, you're not just a horror fan. You might like slasher, you might like camp or 80s or body horror or whatever. But I can't remember if I had posed it or someone else had posed it, or if it was based off comments about how people wanted to see like more graphic stories in audio drama. But it was a question of how far can you actually push audio drama before you turn away the fan base. But I think a lot of it came down to is no one could quite find that line between where they wanted to get the larger community and like commercialization aspect, like the bigger numbers and podcast audiences, and just trying to serve a base where it's like, yes, we want body horror, we want more Human Centipede and Hellraiser and things like that. So do you think that there is potential in audio drama to go like where a Summer's Child is almost like a starting point and it can go beyond that? Or do you think that that's only for such a small niche that it would have difficult being successful beyond just like a pet passion project? Open to anybody.
Yeah. Hey Brooks, you listen to a lot of horror. What do you think?
Everyone can hear me okay, right?
Yep.
Because the camera's not moving when I talk.
No.
Oh. Can't hear me, can you?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, you can? Okay. I got worried for a second. So, yeah, where does the line get drawn about whether it's art or not? I get where you're getting, John. I do feel like it maybe kind of might still be niche right now, but if it stays art, if there's some kind of, I don't want to say a higher meaning behind it, but if it's not just body horror to be body horror, I feel like it can be more accepting and kind of break out of that niche. I feel like Summer Child is a great example of how to do that, because sure, it's got a really disgusting visual that you're going to get from what you're hearing, but it's still done tactfully. I think there's a reason why. There's a larger world that we're seeing. There are motivations behind the characters. It's not just like, what can I write that's disgusting so I can try to shock people for that value. So I do think that it can break out of a niche, but it still is very much, as you say, a niche. Sure. I don't know if I'm really answering it properly.
Well, no, you are, because I know that even, you take like monster podcasts like No Sleep, like they dealt with that. What was it, around season 2 or 3, where they had to start doing didn't have to start doing trigger warnings. They chose to start doing trigger warnings based on responses from the audience. And I think that came after a couple of really difficult stories. The one specifically I know is a budget cinema that involved, it was basically like a Siberian film if it were a short story. Mm-hmm. It was just like a very graphic, involving, just brutal story. And I think that it was really interesting because, and that was No Sleep probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So as much as they're a juggernaut now, I'd be curious to see if they're willing to tread back into those kind of waters. Like, is the audience so small, or is the average horror fan or listener going to reject stories that are too visceral? Or, I know personally, I have a hard time with stories that involve kids because I have kids. It's not that I won't listen to them, but it's like I don't seek them out, and if it becomes too graphic. So I think horror just treads this really weird line, because there are people that want you to push it further and further and further, but how far can you push it before you ostracize your base?
I think for us, we started out with the main episodes, with a war story, and then we went right into a very intimate portrayal of a young girl that was abused and then killed by her parents. We had received some very negative reviews on our podcast because of that, but only a handful. It was people told us that it bothered them, and they asked for, like what you were talking about, they asked for some kind of disclaimer. Mm-hmm. So it kind of sidelined us, I think, because we didn't think that was going to be the one that we were going to have issues with.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, right. And we should have. It was like common sense. Like, this is. But I think because we were so focused on the teddy bear and how strong of that character was, that we were like, But then the author, Mike Lee, started getting kind of shout outs on Twitter. People were saying, "Well, this was a great story. It's terrible, but it was great." And they were really, really enjoying it. I think that one of the things that, I don't know if it set us apart, but our first season, we were looking for people that aren't necessarily writing for a podcast. They were just writing horror stories.
Sure.
And we gave them sort of the freedom to write, whatever they wanted, or, if something, we preferred something that wasn't published, but some of the stories were, and I think it was a little bit distinctive. Sometimes people are writing these stories sort of with specifically for like an audio podcast. You kind of hear it almost sounds like a documentary type deal. Mm-hmm. And these stories were made more like if you were trying to, create an anthology of short stories, and you had this variation. And I think so, like for Dan, he was just sending us a story that, it could have sounded like it was from a much larger work, the way it was, almost like he cut in pieces. And that's what I think got everybody interested in it. But I think in terms of horror, we have to remember that horror can be a genre that complements something else. You can have a science fiction fantasy story that is horror,
Event Horizon.
Yeah. Event Horizon. We're really, any major Michael Crichton story is kind of horror. Jurassic Park, and yet people are okay with it. You can get massacred by dinosaurs, and for most people, that's probably not their cup of tea. If I said, "Hey, I'm going to go and show you a movie where a person gets ripped to shreds by a bunch of dinosaurs," especially a guy sitting in a toilet, you know, and he's going to get ripped to shreds or whatever from T-Rex, somebody's probably going to be like, I'll pass. But you get somebody like Steven Spielberg, you get, you know, the story that really depicts characters in a sci-fi way or a dramatic way or people we can associate with, and suddenly horror becomes totally acceptable. So I think there's the thing. I think if you just focus on, you know, a slasher movie where there's no character development, there's nothing, there's just wiping people out left and right without any kind of repercussion or anything, that's going to divide your audience. But if you find a way to sort of, you know, mix genres and give people something more to kind of cling to, I think people will accept anything.
And still a motivation too for the character. Mm-hmm. There has to be some kind of motivation to spur on the plot. Like you had awesome motivation that started the story right away with Summer Child. You know, get house for just 1 minute, you know, and you're like, whoa, what's going on? And then unraveling it as, you know, we're learning along with the characters as they went into the house.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, by showing the crazy dad, you automatically like, oh man, this little boy he's trying to save is in trouble. You know, so you naturally are getting sucked in because you want to see that kid get rescued.
See, and when I first started listening to it, I heard it different. I didn't think the boy needed to be saved. I thought the boy was being kidnapped.
And that was the intention, and the music. It was the music that really helped that, because I was kind of, when I wrote it, I was trying to deceive the reader, and that was exactly what I wanted the reader to think, that it was a kidnapping.
Yeah. Worked on me.
And because you are introduced to the couple at the very start of the story, the music, which is that like seedy kind of criminal, you know, that vibe you get. So
noir, it's like a noir feeling.
Yeah. So you associate that kind of feel with the introduction of the characters. So straight away, just through the music, you're making an assumption about who these people are, which is why I really love the music.
So I'm curious, because we touched on it a couple of different ways, talking about motivation. One from motivation of the writer for what they're trying to create, and two from the motivation of the characters that they've created. I'd love to hear more about what was your motivation behind this story. Like, where'd it come from?
So say going back a few years, I remember it being primarily a writing exercise. And only on hearing it again, I realized it was because I wanted to write something in the present tense, which I hadn't really done a lot of. So that was it. So I thought, yeah, present tense, that's going to get you a nice quick pace. So I just wanted an all-out kind of action horror story, which is kind of why I gave it Into the Grey Rooms, because I thought when it's converted to audio, being present tense, that might work really well. Other than that, I think I just thought I haven't written a cannibal story yet, so let's throw that in.
You know, you even calling out present tense, like that hit me. I don't think I noticed it immediately until he started going upstairs, but you just don't hear it much in horror or in audio drama. Like everything's past tense. Like everything is what happened to me or a recount, especially when you have a narrator who's recounting the action. Like it definitely set a different tone for the story, the immediacy of it, as opposed to, because present tense adds a different level of tension. Like, you know, someone speaking in past tense, especially, it wasn't in this case, but if the narrator is the one going through the action and you're speaking in past tense, oh well, he survived. But in this, the immediacy and the present tense and the omniscient narrator, you're in the middle of that, like, okay, he got stabbed in the leg already, and now he's going up into just the worst place I could imagine, frankly. You know, a crazy little girl out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre just jumped out of the closet at him. Like, it definitely roots, in this case, the listener, and I don't know, it definitely had its own feel. And I never thought about using first person in especially audio drama before, but it really worked.
I only on hearing it myself, I kind of realized there's kind of a an up and down pace with it. You'll have a really fast action scene,
Yeah.
and then you'll have a few moments where he's kind of catching his breath and kind of summarize it. You know, what am I going to do next? And then he'll make his choice, and then another quick scene, and it kind of has this nice ebb and flow to it that really did come across in the podcast, which is good.
Well, the writing dictated so much of the feeling. It's like it puts you right in there. So like on my side, writing the music, it's like I heard this stuff while I was listening to Just Gabe doing who by the way did an awesome job. And and it's like it sets the mood for me. It set the mood without the music. And I was like, okay, so this is what's missing. This is what needs to be added. And so that's how I, came up with what I came up with. So like a lot of times when I'm writing for these things, it's, I kind of have to think of my own thing. But when I was working on this episode, it just synced up. The mood was there. Everything was very descriptive. It was perfect.
And I noticed as the story changes from kind of early on suggesting it's a crime story, and as it becomes more horror, as the story progresses, the music changes with every beat as well. That was really good.
Thanks.
We notice these things.
So as little as I actually like to expose my ignorance when I listen to or read stories, I think it happens a lot. So I have to know, like, what happened in the story? Like, what does the reader / listener not know before the story started and after the story ended? Like, we're thrust in the middle of it. So motivation exists for the character, but we don't know the true motivation besides going to get that boy. Well, why was the boy there?
There's a few little hints in there that the Swift is the town butcher.
Yeah.
And there's a line there where Cherry says regarding the mum, because she's running out of all the best bits.
Yeah.
That Dad says we should have started it much earlier. So there's kind of like a Hansel and Gretel steal a child and fatten them up early kind of thing going on. So in my head I assume like the mum and the little boy might have gone into the butcher's shop one day, and the butcher has kind of gone, oh look, he's a likely new member of the family that we can start early, and that's at some point he snatched the child. The couple know, and they're just trying to get the son back.
So is that also hinted to at the end when they pick up, like when they squeeze? I can't remember the exact wording, but like squeeze their son between them, and like his fingers sink into the boy's fat. Like is that like an indication that the boy has been being fattened up, or just more alluding to what was going to happen?
That's what I thought.
It was more, yes, the early signs of fattening up, but also the hint of why did the couple really want to get the boy back?
Yeah.
Are they just another family that want to do the same thing?
Oh man, see, I didn't even think about it. Now that's like just a different level of ugh.
Well, that's a big fan theory online.
Yeah.
Brian and I kind of discussed adding a bit more on. But Brian went, no, we can't do that. We'll get complaints.
Well, that too, but I think it plays better, especially like you saying that. Like, I think it plays better not knowing. Like, I think that's a fine line to tread, especially in horror. How much do you say? How much do you show? How much do you just allow the audience to draw their own conclusions? If somebody wants to hear it at the end and like, hey, they got their son back, great, that's closure for them. And if they want to hear it at the end, like, hey, they got their food back, that's good for them. But no, I think especially like maybe, and that was maybe me again as the father saying, good, they got their kid back. That it didn't even enter my mind that it would be the other way. But no, I think I think drawing the line there was the smart play.
Well, I suggested possibly to Brian about the next Raymond scene, what his little souvenir would be. And we spoke about that a little bit, didn't we, Brian? And kind of went, nah, we'll leave it as it is.
No baby. Babies.
Maybe.
I wanted to say too that multiple listenings of the story also kind of reveal new clues. Basically, it wasn't until the third time, because I listened to it now maybe 5 times. It wasn't until the third time that I actually heard the protagonist say, my son, as he hands the baby over to the woman, and then describe fingers in the baby fat. I didn't hear son the first 2 times I heard it. I kept thinking, this is the son of the butcher. Cherry calls the boy her little brother. So Cherry, who's the daughter of, it just reaffirmed to me the first 2 times, they were either saving the boy from the boy's family, or they were just kidnapping the boy to also eat the boy. There was something weird about everybody wanting to eat this boy. But then the third time I heard, I was like, oh, wait a minute. They just said son too. So there's another clue. So I'm just even more thoroughly confused, and I love it.
Well, good job confusing everyone.
Yeah.
I'm good at that.
Yeah, it's not frustrating. It's not a frustrating confusion at all. It's just like, okay, let me hear it a 5th time, and maybe I'll figure out more. It's very effective.
I'd also like to point out that this, and if you take it for the they save their son, I think this is the first happy ending in the Grey Rooms.
Yeah, because
I think White Light Heaven was a happy ending.
That's right.
Sort of.
Kind of. This one, it seems like all the good guys are alive at the end.
I sent Brian the story, I would say, a long time ago, and then I found out that everyone had to die at the end, and I got really concerned. Oh, my main guys have died at the end. Brian, what are we going to do? And Brian just kind of winked and said, "Leave it to me."
Well, when I started looking for stories, I didn't know all the rules because they didn't really exist. I think when I was talking to Jason and gave him Fairy Tale, I was like, hey, the guy gets away with everything in the end, right? Like, then that kind of, so that one, and then Dan's story, I figured, we already broke the rules once. Why not? It would be okay. And that's the thing. Like, the idea is that if there has to be consequences or some way. So for Fairy Tale, I said, okay, well, you know what? It's Raymond's birthday. He's going to go get a way out of dying in this episode. For Dan, I decided, you know what? Raymond's going to die in the Grey Rooms. That way he's already died. Why would you want to die again? So, we covered him twice. So he's good. Now we can suffer again. Hey, one thing I wanted to ask, because I wasn't actually just on my phone just for the heck of it. I was looking at the story. One thing that always got me too is he's a butcher, right? But it also says in the story that he's a figurehead of the town. So, I don't really think of like the town butcher as like the central figure of a community. So that's what kind of made me wonder if he's this figurehead and he's this, this whole family are full of cannibals and the other people might be cannibals. I mean, are we looking at like an entire community of people that just eat each other? Because we know that I think he does butcher other animals, right? I think it's mentioned that there's like other food in that house. So what's going on with this?
I didn't really think if the rest of the town are the same. I think it was, as I said, my first few years in Australia and living down in the country with these really small towns and all of the houses spread out over a large area and those few little shops in town. So if you own a small shop in a small town, you are a major kind of player, So that's as far as it went. I didn't envision a town full of cannibals. So it's good that people are kind of projecting it out further. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I live right outside the Twin Cities in a really big city and everything else, but I'm right next to a really little city that's got like 1,600 people, and there's a butcher shop in that city. And whenever we go to like use that butcher shop, it's always busy. But I absolutely understood the concept of the figurehead, because especially if you're a part of the community, like a butcher shop, more than a lot of other things, you get to know people. Like it, to me, it made sense for a butcher because you go in and you're providing food for somebody's family. Like even like standing in line, getting some corned beef for St. Patrick's Day, like listening to the number of people that would come in and just talk about their families with the people that were standing behind the counter. So I got that, and it made me extra sad that he ate people. Like, you're at a butcher shop, buddy. Have some sausage.
Did he eat people, or was it just the mother? Like, what was up with the mother, and why was she such a mutant kind of person?
Well, the narrator says it at the very beginning. That's what he's eating at the table. Like, he brings like another fork full of white flesh to his mouth. I assume that was the mother.
Yeah,
because we had the pig in the kitchen as well.
That's was a
see. I guess I thought it was pig until I met the mom, and then I assumed it was the mom.
The origin of this, back when because I'm English originally, and before I moved out, there's always loads of different kinds of cooking shows, and there's one called the Hairy Bikers, which are these two. I think they've lost a lot of weight now, but these two big men with the big beards and the long hair, and they would get on the motorbikes and go to a town and do a little cooking show. And they used to have the saying, "Fat means flavor," because they wouldn't like these chefs cooking all healthy. They would cook, stews and roasts and leave the fat in because that's where the flavor comes up. And it just stuck with me as a nice cannibal catchphrase: "Fat means flavor." So that's why they're just fattening the mother up, and just So they're feeding her with any meat. She's getting really big, and then they take from her.
I think that was so. It was sad enough that they were eating her, and the physical descriptions of her and the cake, as you put it, and everything else. But the concept of how broken she was as a hostage and as a victim, that she was just trying to get like the gravy that was like on her chest, like that. Oh man, like that sort of thing. It's like have any of you ever seen the horror movie The Poughkeepsie Tapes? Okay.
Saw that.
So it came out, I can't remember what the deal was. It caused like a lot of controversy. I'm not sure why. It's a horror movie, but it's a horror movie about a serial killer who films himself. Like, these are the Poughkeepsie Tapes and things like that. But it's this really, it does this really amazing job of the concept of like a captive, how their mind gets broken. As much as at one point they want to get away, then they can't live without like their captor. Or like oh man, what was the horror movie about the guy who breaks into the house and turns it like into Saw?
Collector.
Yeah, The Collector. So in The Collection,
Mm-hmm.
like the sequel to it, like the women that are in like the house that are in the house that they go to, they love him. Like, it's that concept of like the broken mind of the captors, like that gets me every time. So just the fact that the mom was just broken, and for her it was just about the food. It wasn't I'm suffering, I'm in pain, or anything else. It was the food. And like that was heart-wrenching for me. That was a great detail.
Another bit was, do you remember in a movie I'm sure everyone here's seen, Nightmare on Elm Street 5? And there's a scene where there is a girl who's, I think her mum's really pushy, you got to be a model, watch your weight. And in the Freddy dream, she's kind of in a big kind of high chair, and Freddy's cutting bits out of her stomach and feeding her.
Feeding it to her, yeah.
Yeah. And when I was a kid, having heard about that but not seen it, it was awful. It was horrific. And then when you finally see it, it wasn't bad.
It's not bad because the makeup is so cheesy for like her cheeks and everything else. But yeah, I remember I feel like I had the same thing where it was like kids on the playground or something. We're like, oh, and then there's this scene where like he's making her eat her stomach or something. Like anything you get in your head at that point, especially at a certain age, is always going to be worse than the reality when you see, Robert Englund and a bunch of makeup doing it. But yeah, that's actually a great example of it.
I think I kind of thought it's not as bad as, now that I've actually seen it, it's not as bad as I envisioned.
No.
And maybe deep in my subconscious, I thought, let's kind of take that idea and do it justice and really turn some stomachs.
One thing we were talking about just hearing something and visualizing it before you've seen it. JM did that with the story. Just listening to it from the voice actors. JM, what did you think of the story? I mean, we all read it, so we all kind of had some thoughts about it beforehand. You're just listening to this thinking, what's going on?
Well, it was great listening to it because I didn't know what kind of story it was. Kind of sounded like the detective noir, gritty. Even getting into the kitchen, the action scene in the kitchen, and then when he hits the hallway upstairs and he starts to say, I've never smelt a dead body before. You're like, okay, here's where it turns. Here's where it's going to start getting good. I didn't know what to expect. So once we get into that room, it's just pure horror, terror. And Gabe does a great job of, cursing and the breathing and like, oh my God, what's going on in here? I mean, like everybody else, I mean, it hits everyone kind of hard. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ, like what is going on in this room? Crazy.
So how much of the story been produced before you got it to compose the music? Were there sound effects or was it just the raw narration?
Usually when Jason gets me the story, all the sound effects are in. Sometimes there's still watermarks on them, so he's almost done. But mostly it's like 98% complete.
Okay.
So I get the whole thing, and then at that point I have to, that's where I start working. I listen to it 2 or 3 times before I even start working on it.
Again, I sat through it once.
Yeah, that's part of the job. So every episode, just listening to it during the day, and then when I finally hit the studio, I've listened to it so much already. I know some of the lines already. I know where the key points are, and then that's where I start my writing. By the time I'm done, I probably listened to the whole thing 30 times. Oh, wow. Because it takes I mean, just going over parts while I'm listening, listening to vocals while I'm laying down some string beds or the guitar or whatever I have to do. It's like you hear it a lot. So every story I come out of, I know it in and out, including the sound effects, because Jason does such a great job, especially those squishy sound effects.
Yeah.
Like the scene in the kitchen when the butcher was bleeding out. And you can hear him gurgling. I just like, I'm not going to put any music over this because it was just sounded so good. I didn't want to ruin it.
So beginning to end, how long did it take you to compose for? I don't know if this episode is any different from anything you normally do, but how long did composition take?
I usually work in 4-hour spurts. It took me 2 sessions, so it took me about 8 hours to do all the music.
Wow.
Yeah, and
reading's the easy part.
Yeah, reading. Usually the first time it's me sketching out writing, because I usually when I go in, I just have a rough idea of what I want to do. Like in the beginning, I'm like, I'm gonna make like a Tarantino tremolo guitar part, but like it's not until I get into the studio that I pick up the guitar and figure out exactly what I'm gonna play. And then it kind of just flows from there. And usually, I don't know, a lot of people work differently, but I work from start to end. So I write from the beginning of the episode and I take it all the way to the end of the episode. Other composers will write the finale first and then work backwards. But I like to start from the beginning and work my way through.
So Dan, have you considered writing a follow-up to this story for Grey Rooms?
Not per se, but Cherry's still alive. Maybe do something with her.
That's true. I thought that was a huge mistake by the protagonist. I was like, don't knock her out. She's the one who will get you. I kept waiting for her to run out of the house after him at the end.
I get with this sound design of hearing her scream, you can really see her flying across that room.
Yeah.
And I kind of, when I listened to it in the car, I said, I kind of had that niggling feeling. I need to do something more with this character because she's too good to just have a one appearance.
I sense a Kill Bill style sequel.
So as far as the podcast is concerned in production, listening to this story in particular and having the physical reaction I did, I'm curious, when you do, anthology style, I mean, the Grey Rooms is kind of different in the way they handle anthology, but do you ever listen to a story and think, where do we go from here? Or you hear a story that you like so much, or it has a specific impact on you, or something about the music or the sound design that it sets like a different like feel for what the podcast is or what you want the podcast to become. Like you even mentioned, like someone survived at the end. Oh, we're breaking rules. I guess we can break rules again. Like, do you feel that the stories themselves are forcing the show to evolve, or is it still kind of what you always anticipated it to be? Anybody?
Dan?
I thought this would be more about the podcast generally. I was waiting for Brian to jump in.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I mean, so you basically, I think, I'm sorry, I was expecting Dan to be answering this. Could you just give me that question again?
No, it's basically, how do the stories, push the narrative for the Grey Rooms, like as the stories come in?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way it doesn't. I mean, really, at least at first, we tell everybody to write the story the way you want to write it, and just in fact, oddly enough, sometimes when we had the contest, for instance, people were trying to include the Grey Rooms into their story, but we don't have any background in it. You don't know what's going on and everything. I was like, don't do that. It should be separate. People should be able to enjoy your story as your story, and don't worry about it. After that, after we listen to it, we decide how we want to, put the lineup together. That's when doing the Raymond and Bob stories, I kind of say, okay, well, I have to fit this in. Obviously, he's going to react to the story. So, for instance, he didn't die in Dan's story, so his reaction would be different, right? So my idea was that, okay, well, he's going to die in, Bob's going to kill him. He's cardiac arrest. And then he gets put into the story. So naturally, he's going to come back out and he's going to react to the situation. Yeah, he doesn't die and he saves this. And he's probably kind of having one of those like WTF moments. So when episode 10 comes around, I don't want to ruin anything, but, there is going to be some kind of reaction to this story, just like with everything. And originally I thought, you know what, why don't we give him some like souvenirs to like every story, like the rocking chair or a pet rat, but then after a while, we just kind of started doing some different things, but there will be sort of a spoiler alert souvenir from Dan's story coming up. So you'll be able to see that. But yeah, I mean, like for season 2, for instance, I have to wait till we finalize all of our stories before I can kind of go on with that. And I do think the stories, I have some ideas as to maybe working them to kind of be a bigger part of the narrative, but I try not to make it imperative to that, because I want to be able to tell the Grey Room story in addition to everybody else's. So, but yeah, I definitely have to wait for all the stories before I can do it, because it'd be kind of impossible outside of that. So yeah, without Dan's story, you wouldn't be able to enjoy a really good episode 10 intro.
So I guess I'm curious, when you go back and you listen to the episodes, like Dan saying he listened to the episode in the car and just kind of hearing everything, hearing the special effects cues, hearing the music, and that changed everything. Being like at every level of production, is there ever a point where the podcast feels like it's really evolving, like really changing for you? Because, I mean, like with my own stuff, like I've written stuff in the past, but I narrate it. Like I'm a reader. Like I read the story the way that I think that I should. But then it goes, you have composition, you have sound design, you have everything else. Like when you first started the Gray Rooms to what it is now, like how much has it changed for you?
So in the beginning, especially when I came in, there was just one trailer, and then there was actually a Man in Lies story that will be episode 12 that was finished, and Graham Rowett was doing it. But there was no intro, and there was no really big, serial type story in there. So what I heard from the story that Mannon had written called The Gardener, which everyone will hear, I could kind of see Jason grow a little bit in terms of what he was doing. That was like his first audio production. And then since then we did Falling, and then we just kind of kept going. I saw the stories get a little bit longer. I saw the stories get a little bit more in depth. One of the earlier criticisms we had was like the music was like way too loud. It was like blowing out people's eardrums. And then, and then all of a sudden, everything kind of comes together. We didn't have anybody doing music. Like Jason was, buying the music and the rights to it online. Then he started talking to JM. When JM came aboard, and JM had done our intro, which nobody had heard until episode 1, even though he had worked on that a long time ago. Yeah. It was like it made a difference, I think, because now, not only do we have control over, the story and the direction it goes, but now we can, now JM can work with us, and we can have control over the music. And now the music is tailored, based on what he's listening to the story. So that was an evolution to it. In the beginning, I had to go on Twitter and just ask people for stories. And, like I ran into Dan Russell, and I had been talking to him a little bit. And I said, "Hey, Dan, you got any stories for me?" And Danny's like, "Yeah, send something." And then that happened. But nobody knew who we were. Nobody knew what we were doing or what we were capable of. Now, when starting with that contest we did for the preseason stories, and for the stories we've received for season 2, people kind of know what's going on, and they want to be a part of it. And I see an evolution in that regard, because now we have a lot more stuff to play with. We have a lot more options, a lot more stories. For instance, if, half the people I was asking submitted stories to us that, were, not as good as they are, what would we have done? Would we just have delayed things and asked for more stuff? I don't know. So I think in terms of everything, I've seen a growth in the quality of our stories. We've since kind of came up with the Behind the Door. The bonus stories are now showing up. We have a kind of a good idea as to the Warden and where we're going with the story. So yeah, it definitely is a big evolution to what we were doing, because to tell people that we're doing a serial podcast that also is an anthology is kind of crazy. I feel like I feel like people just don't know what we're talking about. And then when we said, it's like, the Warden's like Tales from the Crypt meets Quantum Leap. And then, you have this idea that, the Raymond and Bob show, and they're doing the same quantum leaping into a horror story. It was funny because when we were mentioned in the Sci-Fi Channel article about, the horror podcast to listen to on Halloween. And I thought to myself, people are going to have no idea what we're talking about when we say this. And then now I think everybody knows. I think people are kind of looking forward to where we're going with this. And the idea that I can take the kind of storyline and build it for multiple seasons and still include all these anthology stories and build relationships with all these people, I think is pretty fun. It's pretty fascinating. And from the beginning, if you would have told Jason and myself and Brooks and JM that this was going to happen, I don't know. I mean, I don't think we thought, but it definitely became something that we're really proud of. And I hope everybody else is too, because it's been tough, but it's been a lot of fun.
Do we get more stories from Dan in the future?
Dan has submitted a story for season 2, and I mean, I can't really make any comments because we haven't finalized anything yet, so I don't want to ruin that, Dan. But
I think is that me letting me down gently?
I know. No, we the thing is about the season 2 stories is that I have to read them, Jason has to read them, and we're on the process of doing that. But for both of our schedules, like I'm reading some and he's reading. I don't think we're totally on the same page yet, and we're also kind of finalizing the last couple episodes of the season. So it's it's just kind of a little bit slower. I think once April comes around, I think we'll be in a better position to start to, finalize things and let everybody know what we're doing. But surprisingly, we really, like Dan, Gary Bowler submitted stories. Bo Chapel. We definitely have had Candace. We've had some people, but a lot of these people that submit stories were all brand new authors. So that's pretty exciting. We're gonna see what they got going on, and but no sequels yet to Summer Child.
No, well, if nothing else, I still want to see the script that you couldn't produce show up on Patreon as a reward at some point.
Dan's like, it was a great. No, that was published, right, Dan? Like, I mean, that was something you'd submitted into a magazine or?
It was in a book. It was in an anthology. It was in my collection, and it was used as a promotional free short story too. So it's kind of been out and about.
Well, I'm gonna have to look for it. You're gonna have to send me the name of it offline.
Oh yeah, I'll find the PDF and send it through.
I appreciate that. Well, thanks everyone. I had a really good time. I gotta go literally put the kids to bed. I hear them stomping around upstairs right now. I hope that's them. I hope it's them to get their son back because I'm not giving them up.
Uh-oh. I think Swift's up there. You better be careful.
The boy's not chubby enough.
He will. He
runs around too much. But again, thanks everyone. I had a blast with the episode, and I really love the podcast. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you so much, John. It was
John.
great having you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So that was John Grilz. He does the Creepy Podcast, and if you haven't heard that yet, come on now. You need to be listening to all these horror podcasts and supporting us. And most likely, everybody knows of him and haven't heard of us, so that's okay. We lost Brooks. I don't know what happened.
A while ago, actually.
Yeah, I don't know if do I need to resend something or. He said service issue detected. He lost his internet. It's shut off. So, oops. Oh, man. All right. One thing I wanted to say to JM is that that kind of theme that sort of introduces Summer Child was just fantastic. We've talked a lot about, I think everybody was on the same page. When you looked at our first teaser for art, it was kind of this like Reservoir Dogs looking stylish poster. And then you were all thinking noir, and then you had that song, playing. I want that. I would love to hear more of that song. Just just to hear, because I just loved it so much.
Thanks. Yeah, like I said, one of the things that Jason said to me when he usually will send me the file and send me some notes saying kind of like, maybe looking for this or that, or hey Brooks. So one of the main things he said was Tarantino-ish and dark and gritty. So, and that's it. And then sometimes he'll go through each part and say, oh, maybe, something like this. But this time that's all he said, Tarantino-ish, dark and gritty. And like I said, hearing the story for the first time, that's totally the feeling that I got, was that very noir detective-y, fedora with a lamp, with a street light, sitting in the car scoping at a house. It's like, that's the first type of thing I heard, So, yeah, going from it goes, I enjoy kind of bringing in that noirish, and then, what I've kind of been known for now in the Grey Rooms is the horror, cinematic horror, stuff. And it was nice to do something different. I actually got to pull out the guitar and play instead of just pounding away at the keyboard.
I love that guitar, by the way.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We're actually going to be having a lot more of JM coming with these next couple episodes. I think you're in next story, ground level.
Yeah,
right?
Finishing up, doing finishing touches on ground level, and that'll be out for the patrons at the end of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting 2 more stories. I'm not sure which ones they are yet.
One of them Certain Man is one of them too, right? I think you have worked on.
Ground floor is the only one I have right now.
Okay.
Where Jason's sending me something tomorrow, and then as you see it, he's sending me the final episode. I'm on a need to know basis, I guess. They come in as Jason finishes them up. So I'll be working on those, and more exciting is that I'll be involved in every episode in season 2, and I'm looking forward to that a lot because we'll be able to get even more in depth with what can be done with an episode before Jason even finishes it. Because the way the season is worked is I kind of came in when several episodes were already done. So at this point, it's for season 2, I'll be in on the ground level for these for every episode. So we'll be able to work it out from there.
Now
it's going to be exciting and fun.
Now, Brooks, talking about on a need-to-know basis, especially for doing the art for the episode, you were kind of on a need-to-know because you had the opportunity to read the stories, but then you were kind of like on the fence, like, well, I don't know if I want to spoil it. So you kind of had an impression of Summer Child before you even read the story. What was that like to kind of like hear like hearsay, and then all of a sudden kind of read this story and kind of the strange ending and all the other stuff that was going on with it?
Well, the story really, from what I heard, because the whole premise of me avoiding reading the stories was kind of silly, I guess. I wanted to maintain the superfan thing and be just wowed when the episode comes out. And Summer Child really was the first story where I said, okay, I think I need to read these, so I know what to do in terms of artwork or how to promote and make artwork for it. I was not prepared for what I read. I was not prepared at all. It was just crazy. I just was like, what did I read? This was absolutely crazy. I think moving forward, I'm going to want to read all the stories because it definitely also helped, I think, for me to kind of conceptualize the artwork to make for the story, being able to read it first and wait instead of waiting till that very last minute when the episode drops and comes out and I'm listening, hearing it, and designing something for it. So yeah.
And I just got to say, I'm loving everything you're doing, Brooks. All the art. I'm like a big art guy. When I was young, I really wanted to learn how to draw. I just don't have the natural talent to do it. And then, I mess around with Photoshop and stuff. But like your ideas and the stuff you come up with is freaking awesome. I love it.
Graham helped too. Graham made the first
And-
promo for Summer Child. You know, just that wham bam, just popping out the guy and the girl with the guns with the big red background. That was all
awesome.
Graham.
Yeah.
And Graham's coming into himself too as a little artist. I don't even think that really Graham has ever done anything like that before. At least I don't think so.
Yeah,
So-
Graham did the Cell Block B episode. Is that correct?
Did the album art or the episode artwork for Cell Block B too, and I was blown away by how he designed that as well. I think we're having a lot of fun here, and we're learning as we go. Really, I don't like the idea of like, okay, let's say we have 12 episodes in season 2, so let me just bang out 12 graphic artwork representations for each episode. That's not fun. I like knowing, okay, what's the new story coming up? Okay, let's start working on some artwork for it. So the artwork that everyone keeps seeing is really coming out kind of hot off the press, really, which I feel gives it a better quality. Because you're not just planning ahead. Okay, this episode's coming out when in December. Okay, I've got the artwork done 6 months early, 8 months early. It's not the same. It doesn't have the same impact. You know, making the art fresh after hearing the story or after reading the story, I think really ups the quality. Kind
of. One thing we never talked about, I don't think, is how the author feels about this art that is kind of designed just for their story. I mean, it's one thing, to have your story have a voice actor and, some music put onto it and the sound effects. And some people have had that, but to actually have art. And then now we have multiple pieces of art done for the story. I know Dan on Twitter was saying, keep them coming. He wanted all the art in the world. Dan, what's it like seeing people's, artistic, ideas of your story? I mean, we were going all over the place with your story there.
Yeah, it's one of those. Being a writer, especially with novels, though, you're going to get that moment where someone says, "Here's your cover," and it's one of the highlights of the whole process. So, having seen the artwork for previous episodes, it was one of the things I was really looking forward to with my episode. And as you say, the first one that came out was the couple with the guns, with the smoke curling out the barrels, animated. That was a really nice touch, and I was blown away by that. But I thought that was it, and I was quite happy with that. And then along came I think the next was the pig artwork.
That was me.
That's two. That was great, and that yeah. So you had the kind of noir feel with the first one, then the grimy meat-based art with the second one. The next was, I think, the one behind you, Jam. Yeah, that one with the 2B pencil.
Yeah, the episode work. That was Cassie.
Yeah, Cassie Portis.
Awesome stuff.
That just popped. It was like a blockbuster representation of it. I thought it was great. It was very because Cassie is a professional graphic designer. I am not. This is something I've taught myself to do. So when she released that, it was like, well, there you go. There's your blockbuster, your movie poster right there.
And then there's the fourth
one.
Was that you?
That was me. With the Anatomy of a Man by Da Vinci. Yeah. That was more concept. I fought really hard for that one.
That's great. I love that there was original art for Behind the Door. It changed it up a little bit from previous episodes where it was just the original art with Behind the Door on the side.
Oh, yeah.
It's something cool to look at. I mean, you scroll through your Facebook feed and there's another cool picture, and it's so much fun.
That's the whole point behind all of this, is to grab your eyeballs. I mean, there's thousands of podcasts out there, and to just have a post saying, "Hey guys, new episode out," like, that's cool. If we can spend more time creating this visual fun to add to the audio, I feel like it just draws more people, and it just makes the project that much more exciting to be a part of and to enjoy as a fan. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, it's working, I think. For me, it is, as a fan. Because don't forget, I don't get I get the episodes as they come, and also I don't hear anything from Raymond until the episode airs. So right. I do get when I get my my feed on Friday morning for the Patreon feed, usually Friday evening. you know, that Raymond story, even though I may have heard the other one 100 times, the Raymond story, it's like, all right, something new and juicy to listen to. So, you know, so I get to listen as a fan too.
Oddly enough, I do too.
Yeah.
I don't hear it. Like I've heard the stories done. I haven't. Sometimes, like if I wanted to, I can hear like Graham's version of Bob, but I don't really hear like the way he does it like 2 takes, and then
Yeah.
they get like doubled and I guess tripled and whatever, you know, like they just keep making it all fancy. Yeah, I don't get those until the end, and half the time I forget what I was writing because I wrote all those ahead of time. So I'm like, well, what was 10 about? What was 11 about? You know, all I know is that all the evens have a background bit, you know, that kind of give you a little bit of Raymond's backstory. But that's it. Like I really forget what's going on. But you know, there's stuff going on for sure. It's gonna be fun. I can't wait for people to get 12. I remember that intro, and that's pretty fun.
I don't know if I missed this, but Daniel, when was the very first time that you heard the story? Did you hear the Patreon version, or did you wait till it came out on the main feed?
I think I was sent the link to the Patreon version first. But as I say, that was just listening in the kitchen. There's things going on. Yeah, I listen to it in the car loud, as I normally do with each episode as they come out. Normally on the Saturday, so like the next day that they're released, because I normally work Saturdays. It's an hour's drive, and an episode fits in nicely with the drive to work. So that's my routine.
Did you cry hearing it? Like, was it an emotional experience or what?
It's the closest to kind of having a movie made of your work. It's so close.
I think Jason would be so happy to hear that.
Yeah. And he will, you know, because he's got to like, well, you know, he better, right? One thing I want to say is because normally we have the voice actors here, right? And we don't this time. So I do want to make sure that we give credit to Gabe and Lindsay. I think they did a great job. Lindsay had multiple parts, all the female roles. Graham was in it as well. He was Swift. And Gabe, I think he did a great job with the noir. Honestly, I thought John Wick just walked into that house and was getting ready to, you know, save his kid. You know, it wasn't his dog that was put down. It was his kid that was kidnapped, you know. So I think that they put the story, you know, in a completely different light. It makes you wonder, like, if you had a voice, you know, actress that, you know, kind of just phoned it in, it really wouldn't do Dan's story any justice. But the fact that the way they did it really added to that kind of mystery to it. And I think that it was just one of those things where everybody wanted more. I don't think anybody in that story like that has made comments. Most people say they felt like it was part of a larger work and they wanted to know what happens next. So that's me. I mean, what author doesn't want to hear that, right? So it was definitely magic that happened with this episode.
I just want people to keep listening to it because I'm telling you, every time you hear it, you unlock I don't want to say clue. It's a weird word to use, but you unlock another aspect of the story, I feel like, which just goes to further show how amazing it was that you wrote it. Because for the first time listening, I was just so confused. Why? What is going on? What is the motivation? I don't understand. I listened to it a second time. Oh, okay, I get that now. It's like it starts to fall into place each time you listen to the story. Yeah, it's awesome. It gets better every time I hear it.
Okay.
On that note, guys, I gotta say, see you later. It's been great being on, but I gotta run.
Oh yeah.
So we will. I'll see you guys next time. You know, on I guess ground floor. I'll be around for that one. So, Dan, it was nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
Good to see you again.
Good work, mate.
And take it easy.
Yeah, we'll see you, Dan. Thank you for showing up, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yes. Take it easy, guys.
One thing I wanted to talk about too is Brooks. What do you think's going on with Raymond and Bob?
So I'm silly because I didn't realize that. Well, I don't know. I don't know if Bob himself is the one that basically tased and killed Raymond, but I didn't realize that Raymond was dead. I didn't piece that together. Had to be multiple listenings again to figure that out. So I'm just having a slow episode week, if you know what I mean. It's just continuing to be a wonderful evolution of their relationship. Like, they truly have a relationship. I feel that there's something that Bob needs in Raymond, and whether Raymond wants it or not, Raymond needs Bob, because Bob is his only real way for Raymond to figure out what the hell is actually going on. If there was no Bob, that might even be a worse fate for Raymond. That would really drive Raymond crazy. So there's just a very interesting and strange relationship going on between them. But I don't remember if it was the last episode or the episode before, but Bob notes how Raymond is showing uncharacteristic, not aggression, but what was it that Bob said? Come on, you're the writer. He was recognizing how Raymond was fighting back, almost not arguing, but being, I'm losing the word now.
Well, I do think Raymond has been a bit rebellious from the get-go. But Raymond, I think I tried to show that, like, especially even after when Bob didn't show up, like you mentioned, what would Raymond do without Bob? It would be like solitary confinement, pretty much, right? I mean, he would just be in a room all by himself, nobody to talk to. But he is building a relationship with them. I'm not going to say they're best friends, but he does have, they're at least like acquaintances now, I would say, where, Raymond knows Bob knows more than he's telling him, and I don't think Bob necessarily kind of hides things. He is pretty, blunt. I mean, he said that Lucy was dead. I don't know if we can trust that or not. I'm not going to really say, but at the same point, there's definitely, information being given. So I think Raymond sees this kind of if he feels like Bob's hiding something very important, and now he can't take it anymore. Now he's going to start going ballistic. Right. And of course, how do you get control in that situation when you're floating in wherever you are? I mean, whether you're just, we don't know where his body is. We don't know, like, if he's just some guy sitting down like we are, and we don't know. So he has to get control somehow. So he's able to somehow remotely electrocute Raymond. Yeah.
I loved Bob's reaction when he kills Raymond, because it's like it's not played for it doesn't feel like it's played for laughs, but it's so deadpan. And he's got that's unfortunate, I think is what he says, and then just gets on with it.
Bob is very deadpan. It's really interesting. I do like Bob. I mean, the Warden's my favorite, but I think Bob is kind of my second favorite character.
Yeah, I love Bob, and I love the fact that he could even make a haiku deadpan. Like, how do you do that? But then Graham, that is a testament to Graham. Like, he is, I could tell. I think he really enjoys the character, because it has to be a slightly different challenge to try to not be like have a personality, but still kind of emulate a personality, I guess you could say. I don't know, like, the way he's going through he's just going through the motions of life, but he's not trying to show like any kind of maybe like I don't know, like he's not trying to treat Raymond in a nice way. I guess
he's never rude to Raymond, and I don't think he ever lies to Raymond. He's just very blunt and matter of fact.
Yeah,
and the lack of his personality gives him personality, if that makes sense. It's very awkward to explain, which gives it its charm.
And now go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
He comes across to me as someone who's been in his job so long. He just wants to get through the day, and he's bored and he's frustrated. And this guy's just being a pain in his ass. Just pick a damn door. I knock off at 4. Come on.
And if Bob has multiple people like Raymond that, let's say, he's like watching over, I feel like Bob probably does gravitate to Raymond for some reason. Raymond just seems like, because again, going back to like watching or listening to their interactions, I definitely feel that Bob is drawn somehow to Raymond. There's just this expression of interest somewhat. Because if Bob were just going through the day, just trying to get through the day so he could just leave his office or leave wherever he's at, right? Why would he give two shits about anything that Raymond says? Or why would he want to engage the way that he does with Raymond? So I feel like Bob needs Raymond. Bob definitely needs Raymond for some reason. There's something there that Bob needs, or Bob finds in Raymond that he needs.
And well, for one thing, Raymond named Bob, right? I mean, Bob isn't, he didn't give his name anything. He said he couldn't say it or whatever, pronounce it or something. So Raymond kind of took the first step in creating. I mean, like if you have a friendship with somebody and you're like, hey, man, or hey, buddy, all the time. If I went around and called you guys like all these like little names, but not the name you were given, something that you identify with, I mean, our relationship's only going to go so far. So the fact that Raymond kind of made this a personal relationship by giving him a name kind of started things, I think, a little bit. And I don't know, do all prisoners give their captives names? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've never been in that situation before. I'm certain that they probably, I mean, how would that work? So it's kind of a unique situation, I think, between them.
Yeah, because there's not any Stockholm syndrome going on. So it's I don't know. Raymond doesn't like Bob, but Raymond can't be without Bob. It's very strange.
I think it's Raymond's resilience against the situation, and also that rebellious streak. I think it might amuse Bob as compared to his other captives, experiments, whatever they are. So yeah, it piques his interest.
Yeah.
David Steele in the chat room said Bob for president. Would you guys want Bob to be the leader of your country?
It seems like he'd be fair. Yeah.
You step out of line, you get electrocuted. I mean, it's all good.
I don't know. Raymond had it coming, though. He was being quite rebellious. He did just sit down and shut up, Raymond. Come on.
One of the things that I loved about that is, I only have so many props to play with in the gray rooms. I have a chair, I have a table, I have a light. I already busted the light. So I'm like, come on, I want something more to do, So I ended up deciding, all right, well, he's going to bust that chair. He's going to bust that table. He's going to do some WWE kind of stuff, And, it's just kind of fun because I figure by the time he wakes up again and comes back, it's all going to be there like nothing happened.
I was going to say, is that what's going to, well, we will know in episode 10.
Well, yeah, I mean, remember the light was fixed when he came back from the episode with the snake and it was still flickering and he was kind of irritated by it. That's the thing. Raymond's always irritated. You can't make him happy.
I didn't catch that. The light broke, but now it's back, but it's still flickering. So it's instead of it being a new bulb, it's almost like everything just reset, kind of.
Yeah, it's like, or maybe they just have a whole bunch of faulty bulbs just to further interrogate their subjects.
Very noisy.
It's like those vault experiments in Fallout. They just play mind games with you.
Do you know what Jason uses for that bulb sound effect? It's very unique, I feel like, and it's so the gray rooms, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. I am comforted by that light bulb sound.
Really, you're coming.
In the show, it's like name one sound from the gray rooms, and everyone's gonna be like the light bulb. That sound is so unique.
Signature sound.
It's a signature sound.
Yeah. I always hear the sweeping of his feet because he's barefoot. He's always like walking around, his feet scraping against the floor. Yeah, it's
true. I didn't think about that.
There's a couple. I mean, it's kind of neat.
Background somewhere, the echoey drip. And then you get the pipes fixed.
And no matter what the door's like, I think they use the same door sound to start every episode, the door slamming.
I know Jason wanted to use multiple doors, kind of change it up. So that's something honestly I didn't pick up on. I don't know if he's changing it or not now.
No, he's right. When it slams, I feel like it is the same.
Oh, that door. Okay, yeah. When it closes, when it opens,
yeah. I feel like it's the same. I agree. I feel like it's the same door slam sound.
And you kind of know where you stand. Like, right, that's your Raymond and Bob bit done.
Right.
Now
Yeah.
the
It's like
episode
that's the
starts.
signature scene change, basically, going into the story.
Yeah.
So that's
So it's just a shame we don't have like a April Fool's Day thing, you know? Change it all up.
day of the week does April Fool's land on? Gosh, if that landed on a release day, that would be interesting.
It would. I don't know if we'd be playing mind games on people or not. I wanted to do the Graham rooms. Remember that? I thought that would have been funny.
He voiced
Just,
everything. That would be.
Yeah. Everybody, change all the social media, the Graham rooms, and then have the introduction, but have Graham read it, and everything, and just change it all up. That would have been pretty fun. Guys, this is I love doing this behind the door. And I'm Jason, in case anybody was wondering, Jason couldn't be here. It was his wife's birthday, and so they're spending some wonderful quality time together. My anniversary is on Tuesday, and I'm supposed to be spending quality time with my wife, so I'm in the doghouse. No, I'm not.
I picked up on the word "supposed." Then supposed to.
Yeah. Actually, she was following along on YouTube there. I was just kind of seeing if she'd say anything. But no, we are voice actors. This is one of those things where, just the scheduling just didn't work out right for us. So, we'll try a little harder next time to make sure we can get everybody in the project involved. But Dan, thank you so much for coming. You're a great writer. If you want to give me the links that they can use to, purchase your work. I know that you have some things that are popping around there. In fact, if you check his Twitter at Daniel I. Russell, you can see. I know your work is on your main graphic on your site. Do you have a link on your Twitter? Or?
I think my pin tweet's straight to that Amazon page. I think.
Okay. You know what? Let me just see. Actually, I'm on right now on Twitter. Let's see here real quick. But I do. One of the things is a lot of our authors do have all these wonderful books and things, and I think we need to get a slightly better at promoting this stuff here. Let me see. Yeah, Entertaining Demons, and you do have a link to Amazon.com, and actually all your so basically it's just kind of an author page, right? I guess that you have on your Twitter. So we'll be posting that in. I'll kind of update the information on this YouTube video so everybody can check out your work, because you're definitely a fantastic author, something that we'd love to continue working with you and find out just how dark and twisted you are, Dan.
Thanks, man. Well, while we're talking about it, one of my publishers has made that a novel free for the weekend to coincide with the Grey Rooms episode. So if anyone wants to go on the Amazon link, the novel's called Mother's Boys, and that should be free till Sunday night. So there you go. Something for free.
Something for free. And Dan, you're a psychologist, I guess? Is that what you're going to school for that, or you're doing clinicals for that?
Yeah, I gotta be careful how I describe myself, because you can get in a lot of trouble by saying you're a psychologist if you're not. I am a provisional psychologist. That should cover me. Yeah.
I was gonna say that covers everything.
So he is rightly disposed for finding out what's going to make or break somebody, right? Isn't that pretty much how you're?
In fact, the book I'm writing at the moment touches on a few of the things we've discussed, especially about being locked in a room and left, and what that does to you. There's quite a bit of that going on.
Nice. So this is another great thing about Behind the Doors, finding out what people are working on and also their backgrounds, because every author we've had has had some pretty incredible stuff going on, so it's been great. Brooks has really been kind of given a bit of an upgrade. We always used to joke around with him being a super fan, but he's been kind of doing a lot of our social media work. He's been, kind of really spearheading our artwork along with Graham. But if there's organization that we need, Brooks is generally on top of it. So thank you, Brooks.
You're welcome.
And he's been doing a lot of posting for me as well on Facebook and Twitter and everything else. So he's definitely been a huge help. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of Behind the Door. I'd like to thank David Steele and Sergio, my wife, Michelle. These are people that were listening in on the chat room here. We do have 7 other people watching, so I wanted to thank you guys for that as well. And for everybody listening, when we drop this on the podcast next Friday, thank you also for listening. We'll see you guys again for Ground Level. And just to kind of whet your appetite, we have a special guest, not a guest host, but somebody that you'll definitely want to hear for the next Behind the Door. Brooks knows who it is.
Oh, yeah.
I don't.
Dan doesn't.
The lines will be blown. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about it. So you all want to stay tuned for that. And that's it, guys. Have a great night. And we'll see. Or if you're in Australia, have a good rest of your morning.
Have a good Sunday.
Sunday now. A day off.
Nice. All right, guys. Have a good one. And by the way,